You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
CYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated on our podcast, radio, TV partners, and also on the live streams over on X and YouTube. It's good to be with you. We do have a couple of breaking developments. India has ordered the majority of Pakistani nationals out of the country, giving them a 48-hour window to leave. All of the individuals that are currently under the SAARC, the SARC visa exemption scheme, under a Pakistani application. So if you're from Pakistan, you're in India under the SARC visa exemption scheme, you are given 48 hours to get out of the country. Additionally, the Prime Minister announced that Defense, Military, Naval, and Air Advisory and the High Commission of Pakistan would be persona non grata, meaning, forbidden from being in the country, otherwise you're going to be arrested, after 1 week. This is a response to the terror attack in Pahalgam that claimed the lives of 26 Indian tourists. The Ministry of External Affairs, the MEA, is the group in India that's issued this 48-hour ultimatum for all Pakistani nationals currently residing in India under the SVES. Now, this is what we need to keep in mind here. So first of all, Kashmir is a very troubled part of India. Really, most parts of India are in fact troubled. India and Pakistan do not like each other whatsoever. And you say, Tony, we know all of this. Yes, but it bears remembering every once and a while. And the reason that it matters in this particular case is because Vice President J.D. Vance has been shoring up an economic trading deal with India, possibly a future for a military alliance. This is something that I have often suggested as a counterweight to China. China also does not like India. Now, there's a third facet here. The third facet here is that the nation of Pakistan and the nation of India are both nuclear powers. And traditionally, a hot war between two nuclear powers is not seen as a very mucho grande good thing. So when you're looking at the world situation regarding Trump, Russia, Ukraine, when you're looking at China and Taiwan and the South China Sea situation, you've got a very concerning level of ramped up rhetoric of higher stakes when you get two rather let's just say immature nuclear powers who start getting a little bit testy over a serious Islamic terror attack. Prime Minister Modi is already receiving support from the United States after the terrorist attack in India. We'll talk a little bit more about this as information develops, but while this isn't necessarily trending all across social media, this does in fact have the potential to change everything that's going on in the rest of the world. So worth keeping an eye on. That brings us to two major points in the United States today. Number one, President Trump is dealing in realism. An argument that I have made going into the second Trump administration. When I was asked on different news commentary shows where I was the conservative panelist and the other guy was the panelist over on the left, I was asked, well, why are you planning on voting for Trump? And I said, because even if Trump participates in policies that I do not think are objectively good for the United States, that the majority of people believe are objectively good for the United States, Trump is a pragmatist, which means that when Trump sees a lot of people who say, I don't like what you're doing, he changes course. He does. He does so rather quickly, in fact. And it's one of the things that does make him a pretty decent president, because a president goes in with this huge package of things that they want to do, and you can have Joe Biden pony up and say, we're going to do this Green New Deal. We're going to get out there, Jack, and we're going to pay for everybody lots of money, lasagna. And the country can say, wow, I really don't like all of the inflation. I don't like all of the canceled energy projects. I don't like the lack of industrialization. I don't like all of Michigan being told they have to manufacture EV cars or else they can be homeless. I don't like California and other left-leaning states not cleaning up their national forests so half the country burns to the ground. I don't like FEMA choosing who they do and don't give aid to. then the president just did what he did anyway, up to and including defying the Supreme Court of the United States and trying to executive order a constitutional amendment into law. Trump goes and does things, and then when people say, you know what, the massive trade war, not a huge fan market side of things. And then when Trump goes forward on certain policies regarding how his administration reacts with the courts, the things that the public loves, Trump seems to do more of and lean into. And then when Peter Navarro gets out there and runs his mouth and the public doesn't like that, Peter Navarro is not out in front of the media much more. And this is the pragmatism side of the Trump administration. You say, but that involves Trump changing his mind. That means Trump isn't right 100% of the time. Yep. And Trump's ability to recognize, even if he doesn't say it publicly because the man does have an ego, his ability to say, you know what, the market's really not enjoying some of the tariff policies that might have been a little sloppily thrown out there. Maybe instead we roll things back for a bit and we hang on and we let Scott Bessent drive the bus instead of letting Howard Lutnick and Peter Navarro drive the bus. And the markets have responded very, very positively to that. Because the reason, one of the core reasons, one of about the 5 core reasons that the Trump team was pushed into the White House, because it was a diverse reaction getting the Trump team into the White House, it was a big tent coalition, was putting the United States economy back on a free market guide rail with some aspects of protectionism. And the aspects of protectionism aren't very well ironed out. So this takes us over to the trade war with China and the Trump administration starting to alter the terms of the deal because the United States economy has unfortunately become semi-dependent on the manufacture of goods in China, which means it's really hard to just snap your fingers and cut it all off cold turkey. Here's Scott Bessent on this earlier today.
China in particular is in need of a rebalancing. Recent data shows the Chinese economy tilting even further away from consumption toward manufacturing. China's economic system, with growth driven by manufacturing exports, will continue to create even more serious imbalances with its trading partners if the status quo is allowed to continue. China's current economic model is built on exporting its way out of its economic troubles. It's an unsustainable model that is not only harming China, but the entire world. China needs to change. The country knows it needs to change. Everyone knows it needs to change, and we want to help it change because we need rebalancing too.
Now, he goes on to talk about how other international groups need to start being harsher on China. It can't just be the United States. Correct. And if the Trump administration leverages its relationships with other countries to put the screws on the Chinese Communist Party and its slave-run economy, then yes, that would be absolutely effective. But that would require working with some of the more warhawk Bushian people in the administration, which is not something that many isolationists and populists are too fond of. This is one of the reasons that I've made the case that the Republican Party functions best when the people inside the big tent recognize they need one another. I hate to tell you this. The crew inside of J.D. Vance's camp needs the people inside of Mitch McConnell's camp just as much as the people in Mitch McConnell's camp need the people in Vance's camp. The populists need the Bushians, who need the traditional conservatives, who need the libertarians. It is essential to have a party of counterbalancing right-leaning forces in the Republican Party. You say, but I don't like that. Okay, split off and do your own thing then, and then lose another election. Because the left is currently recognizing the long-term fruits of what happens when you spend all of your time picking at other members inside the party. Case in point is going to be Jasmine, Crockett, and David Hogg, who engaged in one of the weirdest cases of self-sabotage that I've ever seen. So we've already established that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is, again, the MS-13 tattoos on his hand, the man who was driving, we now know, a car registered under a a wanted human trafficker when he was stopped in Tennessee. Dude's an MS-13 guy, a citizen of El Salvador, deported early due to an administrative error down to El Salvador. Vice Chair DNC David Hogg has decided denying reality and attacking other people in his party is the move. We'll talk about that over on the live stream. We're going to be back with some Jasmine Crockett, too. It's a good show. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, live stream crew. Let's talk about David Hogg. So he already spent $20 million, or announced this $20 million investment from the DNC towards candidates in the left running against Democrat incumbents, which is political suicide and a waste of money. And then has, since a lot of blowback, kind of gone back and started donating some of his own money to certain causes, which is suspicious because how is this kid, this child younger than I, who's never done anything of private substance, walking around with millions of dollars, things that make you go, So David Hogg then, on Sunday, gets up and announces that, well, you don't know that this Garcia guy is a member of MS-13. In fact, you know dang well that he's not.
Got no message. They've got no movement. They've got no leader. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that. I mean, you're defending Harvard. You're traveling to El Salvador for MS-13 gang members. But here's the point. You're taking $20 million. If I'm looking at someone, my vice chair of the RNC, taking $20 million for another effort, it's $20 million out of the DNC's pocket. You can't be on the board of the Fishing and Forest Company and on Greenpeace at the same time. There are places for groups to hold the party accountable. I think it's right.
Yeah, let me push back against that. This was not an MS-13 gang member, and you damn well know that.
Oh, come on.
He was not.
Okay,
and
so keep defending this guy.
The administration admitted this was wrong. In America, we have due process, and we are a land of law and order.
So two mistakes that Hogg makes immediately. So number one, he's going to follow the Democratic line that in this country, he says, we have due process. Correct. The United States does have an administrative role of due process. We do not have the same kinds of due process. If you're a citizen, you have one kind of due process. These would be the Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to a speedy trial, etc. If you're a visa holder, you're an immigrant who is not a citizen, then you have a different set of due process rights. If you are an illegal immigration member of, we're not going to say society, but if you're someone who immigrated illegally, then you are in fact subject to a judicial hearing and then the nicest leather boot that we have to kick you out of the country with. That's it. And David Hogg going in on that is insane. Also, going against the MS-13 thing, it's a wild series of moves because right now, the Trump administration has some soft targets. And we'll talk about Russia and Ukraine a little bit later on in the show and where the Democrats could be doing some mush and push, but instead they're going to stick with Trump as Hitler because what we really needed was the writer of Seinfeld that's not Jerry to bust into the room and act ridiculous. And then Jasmine Crockett. God bless Jasmine Crockett. I am so happy whenever I see that name trending on Twitter because she has just decided to assume this role of leadership in the Democratic Party. She's not a popular candidate in her own district in Dallas. She is not a popular candidate nationally, or excuse me, member of Congress nationally. She says the dumbest things consistently, and given the stereotypes of the young members of the Democratic side of the House, you would think, that she would try really hard to be doing what AOC is doing. AOC is actually kind of reining it in and trying to be more stately and more calm and more professional. Jasmine Crockett is instead doing the opposite. And this gets us into the quick news reaction segment up next, which is a just treat. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. We got to pick up the radio crew from commercial. We'll be right back.
It's the Tony Kinnett cast on 93 WIPC.
Jasmine Crockett, the Democratic representative from Dallas, has decided that in this time of some unstable footing, the Republican Congress is really taking their time on the continuing resolution and the tax break stuff. It's really not moving forward. A lot of things aren't being codified into law. Again, the Trump administration is still struggling to find the right footing that it wants to move forward on regarding trade policy, and international, and I should say foreign policy through the Department of Defense is a little bit shaky because right now there are some isolationists inside the Pentagon who have decided that they would rather leak things to the media because they don't like Pete Hegseth because he isn't gonna kiss the Houthis' backsides. That's not what Qatar paid me for. Well, it just turns out that the left has squandered every single opportunity. If there was one thing that Trump is blessed with more than anything, he is blessed with the constant and utter stupidity of his enemies. Jasmine Crockett is a perfect example of this. So Jasmine Crockett, because again, really great communication strategies beget better communication strategies. She goes on Jimmy Kimmel because, of course, and starts talking to Jimmy, dear old Jimmy, about something that she's always been really good at. Why is Jasmine Crockett a great leader for the Democratic Party? Well, because she loves math and science.
I actually wanted to be an anesthesiologist. So I've always been really good at math and science, but I didn't want to talk to people.
You wanted to put people to sleep, and you kind of are doing the opposite thing now.
Yes, I want them to be woke now.
I want to be woke now. Yes, that's going to come into play in just a second. But first, she's going to really take Elon Musk to task. So a reminder, Jasmine Crockett, who cannot pronounce the word million or billion, really good with math and science, who has never once described a physics process, a chemical, or a biological process at all, who doesn't know what a woman is, unless she's, talking about a black woman, then she knows, darn well. This is Miss Anesthesiologist. Here she is talking about her contemporary geniuses, or who she doesn't consider to be contemporary geniuses, Elon Musk.
Oh, it really is. But let me tell you something. We really don't know how much damage they're causing. Like, when I tell you that the level of incompetence is almost like incomprehensible, it is so bad. And when you bring up the idiot known as Elon Musk,
man sending rockets into space, and she's calling her governor Hot Wheels because he's a paraplegic.
He is not only like very sinister and has no idea of what he's doing, and people are like, oh no, he absolutely knows because he's the richest man in the world. Like, yes, he knows how to hire smart people, but don't conflate that and believe that he is the genius, because he ain't. I mean, it says a lot when you literally are supposed to be the leader of the free world and you're worried about a rising sophomore in the house.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of things here. First of all, I do so much enjoy the self-aggrandizement that she truly believes that she is the next big thing, because that is going to create a sense of ego in which, when her own party starts to debate her on things, because she's ruining the party even more than it's already been ruined, she won't back down and kind of take her licks and move on. Number two, so her claim that Elon Musk isn't smart because she's really smart. I'm a millennial, and I say like and literally way too much. I know, in fact, those are things that I do too often. But when you are a congresswoman trying to tell everyone how smart you are and you can't think of the words, and so you say like and literally because you can't literally even comprehend how stupid he is. Look at him sitting over there hunched over a chessboard. We were talking about him the other day and oh my God, just horrible. Fantastic. Please, more Jasmine Crockett constantly. We need more of this in the party. There's another rising star as well, the new mayor of Oakland, who thinks, I know this is going to shock you, that $50 minimum wages will fix inflation.
You're calling for a $50 an hour federal minimum wage. That's 7 times the current national minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Can you explain how that would be economically sustainable for small businesses? You have 60 seconds.
First, let me say I owned and ran a small business for 11 years. I created hundreds of jobs. benefits, retirement benefits, also health care benefits.
Do you think that she paid her employees a $50 wage? You think so? I have my doubts. I have my doubts. She goes on to talk about how, this is necessary to stop inflation. You print more money to solve the money printing problem. Yes, that's that anesthesiologist career track I've heard so much about. Well, unfortunately there's some other news that's not just the left that's acting out. Unfortunately, there are some members who on the right who aren't saying the wisest thing. So the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, she had her purse stolen from her while she was at a restaurant in Washington, D.C. The optics on this, the answer, by the way, on how to talk about this is under Mayor Bowser, Washington, D.C. is awful, and this is why Congress should control the city like it was designed to, and not, some random unconstitutional government that props itself up and wants to be a state. Kristi Noem instead decided to get out the tinfoil hat. Here you go.
Question for you. I see you're in the news this week. You went to a restaurant and someone swiped your purse. Who was in a COVID mask, by the way?
Yes,
that tells you
that's
everything.
right. That tells you.
Did you ever get the purse back?
No, I didn't. It was kind of shocking, actually, because it was sitting right by my feet.
Yes.
I actually felt my purse. He hooked it with his foot and drug it a few steps away and dropped a coat over it and took it. But, I felt it, but I thought it was my grandkids kicking me in the legs. But it was very professionally done. And I think that.
It was professionally done. Oh man, as a conspiracy. I don't. It must have been marked. Guys, thieves have been doing thieving for a long time. If you think that's the most professional trick in the trade, no, not even close. As far as confidence men are concerned, relax. You don't have to do this. I was worried the clip was going to be a little bit worse than it was, and for that I'm thankful. There is something we do have that's a little bit worse. Here's Michelle Obama out again. Think about the last 5 or 6 times you've heard Michelle Obama on a podcast. I know we're all avid listeners of Michelle Obama on podcasting. I know I am constantly, searching for any updates from the Illinois president's wife. But anywho, Michelle's out on a podcast talking about how apparently, if there's one thing that none of us knew, is that black women are not allowed in this society to articulate pain. Incredible.
We don't articulate as black women our pain because it's almost like nobody ever gave us permission to do that.
And does anyone care?
Yeah, there's that.
Will they care?
If
we knew, I think we would care. If we knew.
Mm-hmm.
If we knew.
Or, and we have to ask ourselves, the men in our lives is, why wait to be asked?
Do you know how quickly she was about to throw a jab at Barack? It's just disgusting. I hate side jabs like that. We have to be willing to ask the men in our lives. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Matt Walsh beat me to the punch on this one, and I'm really mad about it. He said, considering that Michelle Obama is the one saying this, articulating her pain is literally all Michelle Obama has done for 10 years. For 10 years, she's gone on every interview she can, and she's just whined. Like a nice Merlot, just whined all over the place. So, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the people. Who out there is going, you know what I don't want to hear? Black women complaining. Show me that video. Show me one article. Show me one article that says that. I can't think of a single one. God, the desire to be victims, the desire that Michelle Obama and the other liberal activists desperately need. We're going to head over to the commercial break. We'll catch you in a second, Radio Crew. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. On a more positive note here, Rob Carson, who's a really good friend of the program, he's over on Newsmax Radio. I think he's articulated probably better than anybody since the late Rush Limbaugh how the left manipulates language in order to make something that is a clearly partisan point sound like a common good we all should be supporting. It's the core of progressivism. And he articulates this pretty clearly, just, no nonsense, right to the point, in a new clip he sent over called Labels.
Pro-abortion, anti-abortion, pro-choice, male, female, non-binary, global warming, global cooling, climate change. You see how they do it?
It's the Rob Carson Show.
Yeah, he's right. He's right. Again, it's all about the language. If you can make the case, and you see this right now, the Trump administration is considering financial incentives for women to have children, which not particularly on the level with the manner that they are suggesting financial incentives. I would suggest tax cuts. They're suggesting checks. All right. But the left is already suggesting that this is the language is always so heavily weighted. And what's the end result of that? Well, you get crazy individuals like the representative from Michigan. Again, all these representatives who I've never heard of threatening to stay in El Salvador forever, or screeching, literally screeching, like a cat who someone dropped a car battery on the cat. Not on its tail, just on the cat. On the floor of the house, just yelling. I've listened to this clip 8 times. I have no idea what she's saying. I mean, I can hear some of the words. She's in pink latex gloves, and she's just yelling about, I don't know, comment section. Maybe you guys can help me figure this one out.
I yield the gentlelady 30 additional seconds.
The gentlewoman is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
Cause of their servitude, sharing in the profession with those who have not come before you. Similar times of trying medical need, wars and flus past. You will see darkness, you will be pushed, and our society needs you to stand together at this time. Our country loves you. To our doctors and our nurses, I wear these latex.
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from Maryland is reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized. The gentleman from Texas is now recognized. The gentlelady from Michigan is out of order.
She just keeps on going. I really would like to see them use the sergeant at arms a little bit more in booting some of these fools out. I have no idea what she was talking about. She had pink. I wear these gloves for doctors and nurses. Yes, finally. So for the comments are pointing out, gentlelady? I don't know about that one. Robert's Rules of Order do have a rather ironic way of pointing out the inconsistency with the titles of what were considered respectful society. So I think Daniel's got a little poll up. Who has the craziest for the clip reactions today? Jasmine Crockett, the new Oakland mayor, Michelle Obama, or again, never heard of this Michigan representative before. Up next, we're going to talk to Wade Stotts. Kind of a fun conversation, breaking down Generation Z and what has to be one of the strangest cultural phenomenons is a sacred principle which is held right now by the generation following millennials, people born after 96, who seem to only have one core principle, and that is nothing is sacred. A little bit of irony in that as well. So we're going to be right back. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Not very often that I see Jack Black starring in a kind of cheaply branded Rushed Kids movie. Oh, wait. No, I do always see Jack Black in every single kids movie playing the exact same guy. And a couple of friends of mine and I, we joked about going to see the Minecraft movie, but I am more millennial than I am or will ever be Gen Z. And there are some other guys who have noticed a few things. And one of the guys who I think has the best breakdown on not just this Minecraft movie, but a lot of recent cultural issues is Wade Stotts over from Wade Show with Wade on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Tony.
So you see all of these like weird kitschy kind of movies that come out that are very overtly pandering. Some of them to a slightly older crowd, maybe like the Barbie movie, but then also your Minecrafts and your other video game related entity style movies. Why do we keep seeing them made? I mean, I know we talk about the boardroom bubble where they're like, how can we make a lot of money by appealing to the low corner? But you got to think at some time they're aware they're being made fun of, right?
Yeah, this one in particular was interesting because the Minecraft movie having come out, there was a trailer initially that got released, and everybody who watched it initially, it was a universal panning. So everybody just thought like, oh, and it's another slapped together movie. And then the next one, the takeaway that these people had about the first one was, oh, it wasn't Minecrafty enough. It didn't pander enough to the Minecraft fans. So second trailer comes out and it's just a bunch of moments where Jack Black says stuff from the game. So the audience at that point knew, hey, we're definitely being pandered to. And so basically they just turned every line from the trailer into a meme. And so the movie slowly becomes a meme before it's released. And so now this explosive, everybody who watched thought of it ahead of time just thought this is going to be another huge flop, another huge nothing. But what ended up happening is people came to participate in a meme that they saw online. So in a time where people are having a lot of trouble filling up movie theaters, theaters are dying in a huge way. Studios are desperate to try to find some kind of in with especially young men. And in that time, we have this huge phenomenon that essentially turns going into a theater and watching a movie into a goofy meme. And that's the only thing that motivates these or at least a huge portion of these moviegoers.
So I'm not going to dig into this whole, again, the whole kind of phenomenon of the Minecraft movie and the participating in the meme culture that Generation Z is known for. We'll throw a link to that video in the description and on the screen now. But I really want to talk about the broader culture of this because we've seen this with GameStop stocks where everyone would buy stock in a failing company just for the meme, right? Taking all of these things that we were told as kids, I think of this as millennials, that we were told are like mainstays, things that only adults messed with. And Generation Z shares a meme that's, hey, what if we all went and took all of our money out of the bank at the same time at Tuesday, 9:30 a.m. and just watched what happens? I mean, when you said it best, when everything is a farce, then nothing is serious. And I don't want to dive in and say, oh, this is a very serious cultural problem with society. But it is a really clear example of how those who thought they were driving the bus in culture have just completely goofed it up and they have no idea what they're doing.
Absolutely. I think that a key piece of this is that, again, we were told, again, as millennials, I'm a millennial as well, that all of these things are not just key things that only adults play with, but also very real and very important and important indicators of societal health. And then Gen Z comes along and essentially tries to treat it as if it's fake. Like if it's fake, then it will respond like this. And lo and behold, if they treat it like it's fake, then it does.
When they went to the Minions movies and they're all dressed up in tuxedos and they're going out for a night on the town. And you see all these videos, people going to McDonald's and they're dressed like they're out for the 30s. See you next week with the film and the boys.
Yeah, well, they recognize, again, like this, okay, they don't expect when they do these real things to find something real that actually impacts them. So they just turn it into, okay, well, if it's going to be fake, if everything's going to be goofy, then I might as well have a good time acknowledging the fakeness of it. And so I think it's at some level a kind of healthy response to just think, okay, well, I'm not going to be miserable about it. I'm not going to sit at home and just go, oh, no, there are no good movies. That's kind of probably what millennials are doing, or making videos about how bad the movies are. Right. Zoomers, I think at some level are just like, okay, well, I'm just going to have a fun time.
And I think there's some I like the healthier response take on it because it is in fact true. The idea that I, as a 95er, the very last of the millennials, the gatekeeper of the last of that generation, there is kind of a doomer perspective to walk around and say, everything stinks. It doesn't have the same excitement that I had about things when I was a kid. And, I was looking forward to going and seeing as a kid, I'm going to get roasted for this, the Thomas the Tank Engine movie that they made.
Yeah.
I was excited for this. And it was awful. It was Alec Baldwin and this girl train that guys think of trains as a powerful, tough, fast train. Yeah. And the entire movie is about this magical, lame little feminine locomotive. It was disappointing. Gen Z, on the other hand, you're right. Like the facade's kind of broken. And I saw an interesting post by this guy named Jake Lee, something like that, about Gen Zers did the same thing where they went to kind of like a symphony. They decided that they had so much fun going to see this goofy movie in tuxes that they then took their rented prom suits and tuxes and they went to, I think it was in Kansas, like the Kansas City, or I know that's in Missouri, but they were in Kansas driving in. But they went into like a symphony and they had a fantastic time. And it was like the lights came on where, oh, we can actually just go to these events that are actually worth going to see. No one's stopping us, kind of a thing. I like that.
Yeah. I think that millennials are probably one of the last generations that, we were promised a lot of things as to how the world worked. We were taught that this is like you can basically expect the world to function this way forever.
Yeah. You go to college so you can get a good job, and you do this so this will happen. That kind of a thing. Yeah.
Right. And so we were handed a bunch of promises, and then all those promises turned out to be, if they were true at one point, then they're not true anymore.
Right.
And so the Zoomers are growing up in a time where they don't have those promises, that they kind of grew up when, again, everything's a farce. We had the Biden administration, right? Imagine growing up or graduating high school during COVID, going to college during the Biden administration, or some combination of those things. It's a time where, you can be cynical, and then the cynical response, you can either sit back and just kind of shake your head, or like you can have a good time. And hopefully that energy can be channeled into things that are of quality, and that they can encounter something that's supposed to have depth. Like at this point, a lot of these folks are not expecting narrative depth or expecting cultural depth when they go to some kind of piece of cultural artifact or whatever. But we can, if we use that energy, then that energy can be channeled in a healthier way, hopefully.
Well, there's kind of a weird, I think things that were sterile. So what year were you born, actually, if I might ask?
92. Okay,
cool. So we're not too far off. So if you look at the cultural sterilization in certain areas where things were supposed to be more prim and proper, like when you'd watch a network affiliate news station, you'd turn on, channel 6, 8, 13 here in Indiana, or whatever the numbered affiliate stations are when you were a kid, you would expect that, even though there would be political rhetoric, there would still be someone going, well, I think that both sides, in fact, have some good points. And there was this weird sterility, and you had to go to the serious place to get serious points. And you had to go to the cultural places to get cultural points. And because, like you said, when we were growing up, all of that was thrown aside and they shoved politics into the sports that we were watching and everything else. Now the Generation Z is going to a totally different place to get their culture from, to get their politics from. Have you seen this at all, or am I kind of just barking up the wrong tree?
Well, I think there's a key. There's at least something interesting to notice about the centrality of this meme phenomenon. The fact that there can still be cultural touchstones, but those cultural touchstones are essentially negative, and that's an odd place to be. So that if all of your you can like. I grew up and we would watch Mystery Science Theater. We would make fun of The Room and things like that. And that's part of it. But there's also like millennial sincerity that is a cartoon of itself in some level. So I think there's like both of those things existed, so that we were cynical about things that were bad, but we also had things that we liked and enjoyed. Many of which were also terrible. But I sympathize with a generation that is mainly gathering around something to make fun of, and doesn't have some kind of fallback.
It's a weird place to be in, where for Gen Z, it appears the rule is nothing is sacred, and that principle is sacred. So like everything must be made fun of. There are no exceptions, and any protection of any kind of a point will result in me going to find the edgiest meme. Basically, it's all edge, no points, a pizza cutter. All of the edge possible, not really going anywhere. And I don't know, I don't really try to analyze it very much, because you try not to. Some of it's just not worth, why is the kid playing a game? Well, because games are fun and he's a kid. You don't need to break that down into, well, actually, you got to think about it, man, because if the kid's not out there fighting for his father, he's never going to save him from the draft. I'm not going to be Jordan. But I think that there is something to look at. I want to know what that generation looks like when it actually does start taking some responsibly. Are there some like hidden common themes that the Zillennials, Gen Z and I Alpha behind them, that they do find sacred, that they do find important, that no one has really noticed yet, that no one can really pin down?
Yeah, I think that the fakeness of everything, a lot of the things that they are making fun of are fake. And so that's something that we can find some kind of solace in. I mean, I grew up as a millennial. I grew up liking The Simpsons, and The Simpsons that was coming out earlier than I was born. So like I would watch old episodes of The Simpsons on DVD. Again, millennial stuff. But The Simpsons, what it was great about doing was it was making fun of plenty of things, and then at some level, there was a key part of those early seasons where it's at bottom about a family who genuinely loves each other and may not know how to express that. So there are problems, and Homer is actually an oaf, but he's trying at some level. Yeah. And then in later seasons of The Simpsons, it threw that out so that like Homer wasn't a guy who cared about his family. He was just a guy who just was totally self-centered.
So much so they literally invented a cultural term for the macroization of a character's features. Ned Flanders, right? Flanderization, where the guy would become all of the jokes about him so that there was no more common, but he's just a normal guy at the end of the day.
Right. And so like if you have again what happened in early Simpsons, I think that there was plenty of stuff that needed to be made fun of because it was fake. But at bottom there was some kind of cultural loyalty to a family. Hey, we're all trying to figure this thing out. And maybe it's inevitable. Maybe it's inevitable that postmodernism eats everything. But I don't think that it has to. I think that there are certain things like family and like religion. I think that the uptick in conversions to Christianity, the uptick in many denominations in America, I think shows that there are things that young people see as true, see as valuable. They're trying to latch onto something that isn't easy to knock down. A lot of the cultural things that they've seen in their life are easy to knock down. They don't take much time and effort to really tear down. But there are some things that have been around for hundreds of years, thousands of years, that they can hopefully gain some meaning from.
I'm honestly kind of frustrated because I wanted to talk to you about other videos that you've made, and I just got caught on this rabbit trail. And I'm FCC clock being awful as it is. Tell us where people can find you, where they can get a hold of your stuff, because it really is worth watching.
Well, thank you. I'm Wade Stotts on X. I'm The Wade Show with Wade on YouTube. And also canonplus.com is where I do my weekly podcast called The Wadecast with Wade.
Awesome. Wade Stotts, thanks for joining us. Love to have you on again sometime. Really appreciate this, man.
Thank you, Tony.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Good evening, everybody.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. Good to be with you. There are a few loose ends to tie up today, and these would be an arrest at Trump Tower today in New York City. So for some reason, the left has this idea that if they're going to go and they're going to protest Trump, they're going to protest Doge or whatever, they just show up outside of random places. And here's what I mean by random places. They think that Elon Musk is out there, doing his, stinky, weed face while he's thinking about rockets. And on, I guess, a bank of computer monitors next to Elon Musk is like a live camera feed of every Tesla dealership in the country. And if you and 15 obese friends go outside the nearest Tesla dealership and hold signs that are misspelled and go, "We don't like South Africans," and chant that over and over, he needs to go back to his country, which, congratulations on, I guess the very immigration policy you accused the right of having. But anyway, regardless, that Elon Musk sees that and goes, "Oh no, they're right outside my dealership in Oklahoma City. How will we recover?" And then I guess that Trump has another bank of monitors near him and said, "Oh no, look, over on monitor 14, there's a protester inside Trump Tower. Not the one in Gaza. We haven't built the one yet in Gaza, but it's going to be incredible. Someone get me Carolyn Levitt. She's got to do a press conference immediately." They don't actually care. But you had a protester show up inside the Trump Tower, and we have this muted because the language is rather spicy. But I will describe, using my eloquent words, exactly how this particular event transpired. So the 45 like president of the United States, again, not 47, just like the presidential seal that has been scrubbed of the kind of eagle in the middle, and then it's just the number 45. It's just, President Trump seal here. Some dude walks up and then spray paints a green, like letters USA over the seal as though he's doing something. And then he just sits down. By the way, not like a man would sit down. He like just kind of curtsies and then just sits there like he's very proud of himself. Wow. Oh, it's so brave, so stunning, so brunning, so stave. Wow. I wonder if he ever echoes his pain, or he's not allowed to talk about his pain either. Amazing. Yeah, that got him. That's it. You're wondering, is there anything more to the protest? No, he did hold up a little banner that says, 4 equals game over, and then some kind of rune of some, or maybe it's just a circle with an X. 47 equals game over. I'm not sure what he was trying to do. It's some kind of weird like hourglass with a circle around it. If you're explaining you're losing, and so here this guy is. No one knows what in the world's going on. That's supposed to stop Trump. You got him. Congratulations. Again, if you are going to protest the president of the United States, and the right learned this lesson struggling, kicking and screaming, may I say, in 22. If you do not like how the president is doing things, slapping stickers on the side of gas pumps ain't going to do it. It ain't going to do it. It was fun. I was there, did the memes, all right, cool, great. I enjoyed, strolling up to a random gas station in a city that definitely did not vote Republican and seeing, Joe Biden, Brandon, that's on you. And, yeah, that's funny. But that didn't actually drive sentiment in the country. Getting behind particular candidates and organizing local and state governments to try to push back actually kind of does something. Now, it may not do the things that you want, but it does, in fact, do something, and it galvanizes a level of support around the president of the United States. And that brings us yet again, because all roads do, in fact, lead to Jasmine Crockett. This is the best timeline ever. Jasmine Crockett has been caught just saying just straight up untrue things. She's changing stories of like really pivotal moments in her life where she was wronged, but it's all different. So here's Jasmine Crockett changing like her entire life story now that she's, crackhead Crockett in front of the press.
I had a great background.
This is in 2019.
As it relates to my ability to deal with numbers, and it was going to pay well. So I was like, I'll be an accountant. Unfortunately, around my junior year, I was the victim of a hate crime or two.
Jesse Smollett showed up like swinging Subway sandwiches around, and he's like, "This is MAGA country." So,
and so were a group of my friends, all at the same time. Cars were keyed with the N-word. We received hate mail in our on-campus mailboxes. And at that time, my school hired the Cochran firm.
By the way, it's kind of funny that she's talking about keying cars. And I look at who's keying cars now. Given that a lot of her friends and colleagues over the years have been caught like keying their own cars. I don't know if you guys know this, but people do not typically track what your car is and then like go to the trouble of scratching the N-word on cars. For in fact, most of the people who actually throw around like the N-word as an insult, as like that's going to really get them, usually can't spell it properly. So, okay.
And there was a lawyer who graduated from University of Houston who was assigned to me. And it was the first time in my life that I felt helpless. And I was like, I want to help people that are going through what I've just experienced. And at that point in time, I decided that I was going to sit for the LSAT. I did Little Shop of Horrors. So when I was in college at Rhodes in Memphis, I ended up doing Little Shop of Horrors.
What part did you play in that?
I was one of the women that was singing.
Okay.
Yes, I was in the chorus.
Okay.
And so I ended up doing it, and the mock trial coach recruited me to do mock trial. And I was like, no. By this time, I decided I was going to be an accountant. Didn't want to do anesthesia no more. Still didn't want to talk to people. So then he goes, no, you should do mock trial. And I said, that's for the kids going to law school. Long story short, he recruits me. I do mock trial just my senior year. I become a national All-American. He says, you should go to law school. So I applied, got a full ride, and said, fine, if I don't like it, I'll quit.
So there we go. We've now shifted from, wow, I was so inspired by the lawsuit regarding the hate crime that I went through that I decided I'm going to take the LSAT, I'm going to be a lawyer, to, well, my coach recruited me for mock trial, and I was so good. I was a prodigy, and I was reading laws and bills almost by myself, and I just took the LSAT, and it was great, and I'm amazing. This must be when the time that Kamala was working at McDonald's, or, facilitating extramarital services to Willie Brown. But it just goes to show you, don't make up stuff about your past to impress people. That's the whole moral of the story. Jasmine Crockett, ladies and gentlemen, the new Democratic Party is in fact here, and it's thrilling. We're going to continue on the live stream just a bit for some bonus tonus. Always thrilled to have the crew over on the radio syndication network. We'll be over on the live stream on YouTube and X at The Daily Signal. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal. All right, let's do just a smidgen of bonus tonus this evening. And this comes down to an exchange between Natalie Winters, who is an independent journalist, and O'Donnell or something, O'Shaughnessy, the CNN Irish journalist who reminds me a lot of the guy from the Lucky Charms commercials. So here's a bit of a fun argument that just really spoke to me, and how CNN and other other outlets on the left have no idea how the tides have shifted in the media landscape. Check it out.
To the people, and I'm sure you see this online every single day, who say you don't deserve to be here because you're not a real journalist, what's your response to them?
Well, I'm pretty sure the group of people in there spent, 4 years covering for someone who was essentially dead, and that's being charitable in my description of him, a president by the name of Joe Biden. So to all those people who are apoplectic over having new media voices, you guys failed, and that's why we're here.
The chair of the White House Correspondents Association, a group.
I love this. So they've got O'Donnell, they've got Lucky Charms out there going, well, we're out here interviewing everyone and trying to find me pot of gold. And we're out here looking around, and I found an independent journalist, and I said, do you consider yourself a real journalist? Because you didn't go to Brown, you didn't go to Yale, I didn't see you in my class on going after parents and trying to strip their children from them. And I'm just wondering, do you see yourself as a real journalist? Do you see yourself as having the luck of the writer? What are you doing out here? O'Donnell O'Hanlahue, famous CNN journalist whose hobbies include eating way too many sweets and walking around the White House hoping someone will talk to me. And so Natalie's like, well, you guys had the seats in the White House Correspondents Association. You guys had the chairs. You had all of the White House Correspondents Association used to decide who got into the White House press room and who didn't. And more importantly, who got in the chairs. So there's these row of chairs, and that's where the journalists who got special favor by the WHCA would sit, and they would get to ask questions because that's where the attention of the press secretary is. And during the Biden administration, anyone else who was on the wings in the room, Jen Psaki or Karine Jean-Pierre, would just completely ignore the wings of the room. And it was all of these left-leaning establishment legacy journalists, and then Peter Doocy. That was it. And so the reason all of the clips featured Peter Doocy arguing with Karine Jean-Pierre or Jen Psaki is because that was it. There was no one else. In fact, the Daily Signal, whom I work for, our Fred Lucas, who'd been covering the White House and Capitol Hill for quite a while, had his press pass revoked. No one said anything. There was no big AP national scale. Oh, they've banned the AP from the press room. The Biden team just absolutely poofed away like Robin Williams' genie had just gotten a wish, just poofed it right away. Thanos snapped his fingers, and a bunch of conservative journalists vanished into thin air. All because the White House Correspondents Association, a very left-leaning organization who was at the time run by a man who had more gender confusion than I don't even think I have an analogy for this one, than an episode of MTV in 2017. There you go. We came around to it. Completely discriminated against any viewpoint, even slightly to the right of far left. Even moderate Democrat groups like Axios could not get in on the private press pool to follow Biden around, or the LA Times. And far be it from me to say that the LA Times is an excellent publication, but if you're going to talk about the New York Times, who has an exclusive spot to go anywhere, I'm pretty sure the people in Los Angeles have as much as a right as the people in the boroughs to ask questions to the President of the United States and his cabinet. And so now the new crew is coming in. Politico's writing hit pieces and taking pictures, like my former colleague, Mary Margaret Olahan, now over at the Daily Wire, and saying, Mary Margaret, she's pushing pro-life opinions and talking about people who have detransitioned. Ooh. And essentially used the photo that they hastily took, like with their phone. Like you're trying to take a picture of your ex at a restaurant. You're like, quick, send that to publishing. And they didn't even write about Mary Margaret, who's a phenomenal reporter. Mary Margaret, I think, is the individual who convinced me that I could never actually be a real reporter. This is why I've always considered myself a pundit. You've never heard me describe myself as a reporter. I'm an analyst, I'm a pundit, and now my title is national correspondent. My job is to take all of the things my colleagues write, all of the junk that's going on the Hill, and then for those of you who don't steep in the nasty, festering bathwater politics of this country every day because you're working real jobs, I try to condense that down for you so that you can then take that and maybe you're entertained by it, maybe it informs you a little bit, maybe it provides a slightly discordant opinion. That's what it's offered up to be. Mary Margaret Olahan is a very serious and diligent reporter. And then there's our Elizabeth Mitchell, who's the Daily Signal's White House correspondent. She is an extremely talented, she's a far better education writer than I ever was. And I mean, and I'm a dedicated education writer back when I got into this game. She frames the issues better. She's better at interviewing individuals for written articles. And pretty soon, actually, I'm flying to DC here very soon to do a little bit of special projects here and there. And you can expect Elizabeth Mitchell, our White House correspondent, to be coming to us live from the White House during the show. It's going to be great. And Politico did a little hit piece on her too. They found the one picture that exists out there where she's not smiling. Again, the ex taking the picture. I got the picture. Run! Like Scoob, we got to get out of here. We got the picture of the conservative journalist. Right, Maggie? Good at your Politico. And the article about Elizabeth is just all about the Heritage Foundation. They didn't even do any kind of a biography on what these individuals did, what works they've done. They just mentioned that Elizabeth went to Hillsdale. Oh, wow, shocker, a conservative from Hillsdale. Whoa. And then that's it. They're just complaints. They don't even have anything good on the right-leaning reporters in the room who are now getting questions. And you say, well, we should ask questions about why there's a major political shift in media representation in the press conference room. And I'm going to level with you here. I have played clip after clip after clip during the Biden administration and then during the early part of the Trump administration, when you had the reporter from ABC, NBC, from CNN, then over from the New York Times, and then NPR, 5 in a row ask the exact same question. Didn't matter if Carolyn Levitt already answered it. Didn't matter if KJP already answered it. They would ask the exact same question, almost verbatim. Now, if you have an hour-long press conference, 2-hour-long press conference, a reporter asking a question and then getting an answer takes a little bit of time. It does. And so when you're wasting everyone in the room's time, we all have a national vested interest in press conferences. It's where we pushed back on the failure of the first couple of days of the extension period in Operation Desert Storm. So basically the first couple of days of the end of Operation Desert Storm, when General What's-His-Name came out and said, everything's wonderful and amazing. And the journalists were like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? You've stalled. What's going on? Give us the answers. Because, George H.W. Bush just walks out there and smiles awkwardly at the camera. What's going on? Press conferences are a necessary area for pushback. And it is important to have a diverse group in there from around the country who's asking questions, because I know this shakes the foundations for a lot of people, especially considering that some of the people who watch this show, in fact, a pretty sizable group, are from New York City, are from Washington, D.C. and the greater Virginia area. You're not as important as you think you are. Are you important? Absolutely. But those of the listeners to the show in Arkansas and Colorado and Indiana and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania turn out to be a lot more important to you during election season. It turns out those people don't just have TVs, radios, and phones during the election season. And they have just as much a right to get their questions asked to the press secretary, especially when you're seeing polling numbers so discordant with what the latest New York Times headline is about. What is dark woke? Democrats are trying out a new attitude. It's provocative, edgy, and perilously towing the line of not being too offensive. Which is hilarious in and of itself, right? They're describing Jasmine Crockett being really offensive. Remember when the right decided to get a little edgy? Decided to sprinkle in a little bit of the 4chan into the daily rhetoric? And all of a sudden, that was considered immediately alt-right, far Nazi, neo-Nazi. They're going to come and kill everyone. And now you've got Jasmine Crockett openly saying, white people and paraplegic people need to shut up. And they're like, well, it's just a little provocative. Well, this is why you need different outlets covering things differently. It's important. And as long as you have outlets like Politico, who pretend to have a diverse cast and crew, they have reporters and analysts all over the country, but then they end up publishing the exact same opinion every single time, all the way through, so that you end up having CBS and 60 Minutes in their last throes of life, because they were caught altering on the FCC clock and under FCC regulations. They were caught altering the Kamala Harris interview during the election season. It's a new age. You brought this on yourselves. And, you want to talk, and this is where the establishment side, the more corporate side of the Republican Party, the Bushian side, this is where a lot of them completely fail to understand what is going on and why they're losing so much ground to the populists. This shift has been a long time coming. And whereas Bushian crews, often called neocons, could kind of have their hand on the wheel and direct the party in a more moderate sense, they didn't do that. They just kind of said, well, those people aren't serious. And now the populists are, in essence, running the party. And so you do have some moments of discordance in the Trump administration right now, like in the Pentagon, where you have the isolationists who are often populist, who are kind of doing some infighting with individuals who are more traditionally conservative. Pete Hegseth is a tradcon. He's not Bushian, he's more of a traditional conservative. And the populists and the tradcons don't really care for each other's foreign policy. You could have hammered all of that out over the last 10 years, but the establishment portion of the party just said, well, we're just going to kind of put our hands over our eyes, we're going to whistle past the graveyard and just pretend that it will someday return to status quo antebellum if we're just really shucksy doodles nice. And that's not the way to play politics. You have to play by the rules of the board game in front of you. Now, that doesn't mean acting crazy. Jasmine Crockett is a perfect example of what happens when you get a little too over your skis. There are members of the Republican side of the House, of course, that act rather foolishly. We've talked about them before. But when you're looking at the new process of dark woke, has the left learned their lesson from 2024 at all? Nope. Not even a bit. And that is going to make the midterms much more difficult for the Democrats. Now, Republicans already have their own problems that are showing up on the midterms. We'll talk about that soon. But if the Trump administration now, at the end of the first 100 days in his second administration, if he's correcting course on tariffs and international trade, if he's starting to correct course on maybe a little bit regarding Russia and Ukraine, which we're going to have to talk about more tomorrow, just ran out of time today. If the Trump administration is pulling a more moderate Republican policy on everything but immigration and things like the LGBTQ plus whatever in school choice, that's a really, really 80-20 Republican policy plan. Really 80-20. I mean, we're talking Big Tent to the max. And that will have some spillover effect. Do you think this first 100 days, if he does actually kind of change up how the administration is going and things start to settle down a little bit, except for the Supreme Court cases regarding immigration and the LGBTQ whatever stuff, if immigration and LGBTQ are the only things being fought really in the public sphere between now and midterms, Republicans are going to buck tradition. And they're actually probably going to do fairly decently in the midterms. Because right now you've got David Hogg stabbing Democrats in the back, Jasmine Crockett stabbing Democrats in the back, and the other youths. You've got AOC and Bernie flying around in the private jets so we can talk about the oligarchy. Oh, we've got to get out there with my pudding. It's going to be quite a time. So those things all said, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. We'll be back tomorrow with some more excellent stuff. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.